Hello and welcome back to Tarot to the Nines, and today we are looking at the Fantastic Four. Not the comic strip, the Fantastic Four, the Fantastic number 4. And first of all, I have to make a couple of apologies before I start this video. The first one is, if you hear a droning noise in the background, that's not me. If you hear a droning noise in the background, it's the fans that I have got going. I've got 2 fans pointing at me at the moment, and I don't mean fans as in people who subscribe to this channel. I think I'm delirious with the heat. I don't mean that kind of fan, I mean the actual turning around blowing air fans, because we are in the middle of a heat wave, which is also why I have to apologise for the fact that I probably look a bit florid, because if I look a bit like a boiled lobster, it's because I feel a bit like a boiled lobster, because it is hot. Now, I say heat wave, and of course, I know that for some of you watching, what I'm about to tell you in terms of the temperature, you will laugh at the very idea of it being a heat wave. But at the moment in the UK, we've been having peak temperatures of around 29-30 degrees centigrade. And at the moment in this room, the temperature is 26 degrees. Now I know that for some of you, you'll think that is barely tepid, but for the people of the UK, and especially for a wee Scottish laddie like me, believe me, it's hot. It's hot. So I've got my shorts on. I know you can't see them because I'm not going to let you see below at least waist level, but I have got my shorts on, and in fact I'm taking my slippers off because my feet are too hot. And so if I start rambling incoherently, it's probably heat stroke, so you'll forgive me if this video is a bit all over the place. I am going to try and make this video a bit shorter than some of the others, because I know that for each of the other numbers I've gone on for about half an hour, which is great in a way, because I know that just from what you tell me anyway, you're enjoying the videos. I'm certainly enjoying making them, and I'm really enjoying hearing what you have to say in response to the videos. It's just so much fun, and I'm learning so much. So many great comments on the videos I've already done, real enlightening thoughts and comments and questions and answers and so on, and yeah, very exciting. Now, also, by the time you see this, I'm hoping that I will have got myself organised to have posted my Facebook announcement to say that the Tarot to the Nines Facebook group is now live. So I'll put the link to that below, and if you haven't already joined and you want to be on Facebook and conversing about tarot and number and numerology and the Enneagram and all the things that we're talking about here, then please do join. But of course it's not obligatory, because you can always participate right here watching these videos. So, on to the number 4, and I'm not even going to make a pretense of having it all in my head. I have got notes here which I'm going to refer to because, as I say, the heat is getting to me. So 4, what I want to tell you about 4, first of all, is you might remember in one of the earlier videos I talked about one of the points that tarot author Gail Fairfield made about the sequence of numbers, and about how 1, 2, 3 in the sequence of numbers in the minor arcana is all about conceptualization. It's all about an idea being born and being formed and being put in a position, number 3, ready to grow. Well, she then talks about the next cycle of 3, which begins with 4, 5 and 6. And that is the cycle of actualization. So it's the cycle in which that idea is given firmness and solidity. And that absolutely is what the number 4 is about. Number 4 is about foundation, it's about stability, it's about strength, it's about conscious progress. But number 4 also has a shadow side, and the shadow side of all of the things I just mentioned are qualities like rigidity, stagnation, conservatism, regression, a kind of pulling inward rather than a pushing outward, because 4 is also the number of building. Now, the numbers in this not consortium, constellation, the constellation of the Emperor, the number 4, as well as the minor arcana 4s, is death at 13, because 1 plus 3 equals 4, and the Fool. Now I mentioned before that the Fool would make a reappearance, and the Fool is reappearing not because the Fool is 0, although we will pick up on 0 again in a second, but because the Fool is also, or can also be, number 22, and number 22, 2 plus 2 is 4, so it's part of the constellation of the Emperor. Now in numerology, 22 is a really important number. It's called a master number. I think it's the one that they call, I'm not a numerologist, so I'm just going on what I've learned broadly. I believe this is the master number, the master builder, and it's very much about being able to turn ideas into action and having the drive and the power and the leadership to be able to move things forward. So why is, see, I haven't even got my pen to hand. This is how discombobulated I am. Let me get my little magic mug of pens and we will do a little bit of board work. So how is it I know that 4, let me get my razor, not razor, eraser, and let's have a look at why 4 is about stability, strength and solidity. Oh, and it takes a bit of effort to get all of this off. This is only making me hotter, you realise? Okay, so, right. So, in fact, I'm going to move you a little bit closer. Whoa! Okay. Oh, that's better. I'm aware that there's a light there. I'm going to turn that off in a second. Okay, so the light has disappeared. And now I'm going to show you why it is that 4 is considered to be related to solids. So if you imagine we start off with the void, the mysterious void. We covered that in the video on the mysterious number, non-number 0. And then when 1 comes along, we have a point. When 2 comes along, we have another point, and that gives us a line. When 3 comes along, as we previously discussed, we then have a plane, as in a flat surface. We imagine a triangular sheet of paper. And then when 4 comes along, this gives us the ability, if we join all of the points up, slightly lopsided pyramid, but if you imagine that that is the base of the pyramid there, then you see that we have actually got a 3-dimensional space now. So we have a solid, we have the ability to create buildings and things. And one of the other things that is indicated by the move from 3, the nature of the Empress, to 4, the Emperor, is the move from nature to civilization. And I don't mean civilization necessarily in an automatically positive sense. I'm not suggesting, and the tarot is not suggesting that somehow civilization, the Emperor, is better than the Empress at 3. Although one would argue, or one could argue, that there's again the shadow aspect of this double-edged sword of moving away from this kind of natural existence into a more civilized existence. Although it brings with it very, very many benefits, it also brings with it some real problems. And one of the problems can be a disconnection from our natural selves. So going back to the idea of the shadow side of 4 and the rigidity and the stagnation and the conservatism and the unconscious kind of regression that can happen if we are in the dark side of 4 rather than in the light side of 4, which is about foundation, stability, strength and conscious progress and growth. Whereas the Empress was 3 was natural, unconscious growth, if you like. So the other thing to say about 4-ness, of course, is that both theologically and physically in our world, a lot of the structures of the world, the real world, but also the spiritual world, are constructed around 4s. So in the sense of both the physical and the spiritual world, 4 elements that construct our world or construct our psyche in the sense of tarot, and of course you can add in the 5th dimension of the spirit as represented by the majors, if that's how you choose to see the majors. But we also see 4-ness, for example, in there's 4 Gospels. In the World card we have the 4 great beasts, the bull, the lion, the man and the eagle. We, in the real world, have 4 seasons, which are created by the relationship of Earth, where we come from, where we are born from. Alan Watts said that the Earth peoples in the way that a tree blooms. So, you know, we are the, if you want to get very literal in terms of the evolutionary sense, we are the blossom of the Earth. And so is everything else that's natural. I'm not suggesting that we are the pinnacle. I'm just pointing out that we grow out of the Earth, and therefore our relationship to the Sun is absolutely critical to our existence, both in a very literal but also in a very symbolic sense. And the 4 seasons are what are born from the relationship of the Earth, us, and the Sun. I'm wearing my Earth shirt. It's actually an astronaut shirt. You can't really see the astronaut, but there is an astronaut there. The other interesting thing is the Hebrew word for God, 𝙇𝙄𝙉𝙆𝙎, which I'm not going to attempt to write in the Hebrew lettering because I'll make a mess of it. But many of you will have seen the Hebrew lettering. Well, if you look at what, this is in the Michael Schneider book that I showed you last time, A Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe, fascinating book. He gives a very interesting picture of the Hebrew letters for 𝙇𝙄𝙉𝙆𝙎, Jehovah, arranged in such a way that they, arranged in an upright way so that they form a human shape. The Hebrew letter 𝙇𝙄𝙉𝙆𝙎, when written vertically, depicts an upright person in 4 levels, image of the cosmos. So this idea of our very existence being founded on 4 is really important. It's also worth noting, if I put that down there, that the Egyptians, they had a word for 4. This is obviously translated. Aft, translated from hieroglyphics, and what that means is, I'm reading this now off my notes, point moving forward to a definite end, which is, I think, rather interesting. Another quote I want to show you, excuse me, I duck off the camera again, it's the heat, I'm telling you, it's the heat that's making me feel just completely discombobulated. The other thing I want to show you is another quote, actually, and this is from another book that I've talked to you about, which is The Meaning and Philosophy of Numbers by Leonard Bosman. Again, it's quite heavy and not always very easy to get into. It's based on a lot of theosophical thought, but it is certainly very interesting. I'm trying to find the bit where he points out that the word for God in lots of different languages is 4-lettered. So numerous writers have noticed that in many languages the name of God is a word of 4 letters. The English word God is derived from the Persian Goda, Lord, that's G-O-D-A, and is 4-lettered in several different languages. So God, Guth, Dieu, Allah, Deus, and Theos, which is the Greek TH, of course, being 1 letter. The great god of Egypt, the supposed giver of letters to that nation, has his name spelt in various ways as 𝙇𝙄𝙉𝙆𝙎, Thoth, Tut, etc. But the actual Egyptian word is 4-lettered, and that's Thut. So, 4-ness very much writ large in the idea of creation, creator, in fact. And we'll talk a bit more about that when we actually come on to talk about the cards. But the other thing I wanted to point out to you is another little sum that's worth knowing about. So far, of course, we have looked at the first 4 letters, and if we actually add them up, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, what that comes to is 10. Now, that's important because it means that the moment we get to another letter and we carry on with this kind of numerological process, if we add a 5 to that, which is the next number, of course. Did I say letter a minute? I meant number. We're going to get to 15. Now, the 15, of course, is what's different about the 15 and the 10 is that the 15 is, we're now in the realm of duplication. Anything that comes after 10, remember 10 is the end of, well, 9 is the end of a cycle and 10 is the beginning of another cycle in my thinking. Although some would say that 10 is the end of a cycle, completion. And anything after 10, whether it's 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, all the way up for all the numbers in the world, are now repetitions of the base numbers. So anything after this is like a kind of duplication. So on some level, when we reach 4 and we reach this solidity, we have reached a point of endings. And I'll come on to that when I talk about the cards, because anything that comes after 4, although we're still going to be talking about new root numbers, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, if we add any of those to the sum that I've just shown you, we're onto a different level. So there's something very important about 4. There's something very important about the first 4 numbers, because those first 4 numbers added together lead you to the end of the cycle, or if you're going by my reckoning, the beginning of a new cycle. So there's something really important about the point at which we get to 4. And I think the only way to really go into that in some depth is to look at the cards. So that's what we're going to do. So here we have the constellation of the Emperor. And again, I've arranged these cards in what 𝙇𝙄𝙉𝙆𝙎 calls the archetypal matrix that matches up to this constellation, which is the crown. So we've talked about solidity, structure, the potential for leadership in these cards, and they really are writ large in these cards. So I tend to think of this constellation, and let's start off with 2 of the most prominent cards in it, the Emperor himself and also Death. I tend to think of this as being these cards, let's get them the right way around, the bedrock of an authentic life. The bedrock of an authentic life, because they're about solidity, they're about reliability. And in a sense, if you think about us coming from, or the creation, the tarot, us, life, consciousness, coming from the 0 of the Fool, reaching the point of solidity and structure in the Emperor, who symbolizes the ability to create structure out of nothingness and chaos. And then we have Death, which is about releasing structure, releasing our beliefs about who we believe ourselves to be, and you could argue returning back to the 0 of the Fool. So there's like a little mini cycle just in this constellation, from nothingness to somethingness, back to nothingness, or from mystery to solidity, back to mystery. And also there's something here about reliability, because there's reliability in the Emperor in terms of the reliable solidity, sitting on this very solid throne. But also, what could be more reliable than Death? Death is the great leveler. It is where we're all going. It's the mystery that none of us really knows about, because nobody has ever come back to tell us about it. At least not as far as I've noticed. There are lots of stories, of course, of people who claim they've come back. But what I noticed about that is, and when I listen to people talking about their stories of near-death experiences and so on, I noticed that near-death, and I'm not for a minute suggesting that they're not valid and interesting stories, but I noticed that near-death is still not death. Near-death is still life. So all of the stories in the world, everything we hear about, everything that we can conceive of, and everything that anyone else can tell us is a story of life. Death is a complete and utter mystery. And we come from a complete and utter mystery. So there's something wonderfully cyclical about the constellation of the Emperor. There's also something about a dynamism and creative tension between the Emperor card and the Death card. And there's something there, I think, about leadership, the idea of a good leader being somebody who is reliable and sure of themselves, but a really good leader being somebody who also is very aware of what they don't know, who understands that there is a mystery and is able to be humble enough to let go of their expectations and assumptions about who they are and how things should be. And I think there's something really quite interesting to explore there in terms of, if you have the life path, which is the Emperor and Death, what is the tension in your life between your need for solidity and structure and your need to control and govern that solidity and structure and rule that solidity and structure in an imperial way, and your comfort in understanding that there is nothing that we can possess in this life that we are going to be able to hang on to when we head beyond death's boundary. Now, I'm not going to get into politics here, because I think that would not be a wise thing to do. But I would just say that I think it's quite interesting that we are at the moment in the world, wherever we are in the world really, will be aware of a very high profile politician who I'm not going to say who it is, but his name begins with D and ends in Onald, his first name. is birth path, emperor, emperor constellation. He's actually a 22-4, but that means that death is his hidden card, fool is his personality card, as in the 22, and then emperor is his soul card in terms of the next one along, with death being the hidden card. And I think you know, we can't use tarot cards to comment on a person's personality, so I'm not in any way suggesting that this tells us anything about that person from our ability to observe it. This, as I've said before, is internal work, it's interior work. But I think it's quite interesting to notice that somebody who is so high profile at the moment and is of such concern in the world, whatever your politics, and it's so noteworthy at the moment in our society, certainly in the Western world, but also in other parts of the world as well, has got this as the constellation. So that's something to reflect on. But I'm not suggesting that we analyse other people's birth cards and birth paths. What's more important is analysing our own. So if you're an emperor, death, or a fool emperor, or an emperor, death, fool, or whatever it is, that whatever configuration comes out, then you might want to consider what is the dynamic creative tension in your life in terms of ownership, governance and creation. The other thing to say is that there's something about different levels of power here. So the emperor is about worldly power, physical power, the physicality that we have, our strength and our vitality in the physical world. Death is about more fundamental power, or the loss of a more vital power, life power. It's the end of life as we know it, and it's a mystery beyond which we can't go, and at least if we're here and watching this, we can't. And then we have the world, the fool rather, which is that return to eternal power, the stepping out from eternal power and the return to eternal power. So it's a bit like the fool in this constellation is very much something as the 22, but is also of course the nothing. So there's that, again, that ability for something to exist as something and nothing simultaneously. And you know, many wise people would say that that is a metaphor for our life, because if you listen to you know, the Hindu sages and so on, they describe this world as an illusion. Some parts of Buddhism do the same, Taoism, Course in Miracles, some parts of Gnostic mystical Christianity would talk about the fact that we are, you know, Shakespeare, we are such stuff as dreams are made on, and you know, we are real in our own lives, but at some fundamental level there is something that is more real, and that's one of the things that the tarot is indicating to us. So I want to just check if there's anything else there I want to say. No, the other thing to say, of course, is about the pips. So let's have a look at the pip cards. Again, all about, for me, it's all about structure and solidity. You know, we have wands, which is about that kind of vitality, passion, our ambitious force, our creative selves. Can't be contained. Here's a structure that has no walls. 4 pillars but no walls. Open air. Celebration. Our vitality, our life force can't be contained. Then we have pentacles. I'm doing these slightly out of order. Pentacles, money. Structure of money. Is this about saving and looking after our money in order to move forward, or is it about being miserly and hanging on to our money? Again, that dynamic tension. Are we comfortable with letting go, or are we fixated on holding on? And what does that tell us about where we are? Structure in terms of retreating into rest, repose, sleep, stillness, kind of structure there. And then in the cups, which are obviously the suit of emotions, I think this is quite interesting, because perhaps the message here is that our emotions can't really be structured. We might think we've got all our ducks in a row, or our cups in a row, but who knows what's going to be handed to us, and are we going to notice what's being handed to us? So there's a lot there about structure as well. So those, through my slightly heat-induced delirium, are the 4s and the constellation of the Emperor. And I, of course, am interested to hear what you have got to say about this constellation. So your homework for this time is similar to what we've had before. Look at your fours, consider your fours in your various decks, consider the whole constellation and see what it means to you. But I'm also going to set you an extra bit of homework this time, and that is I want you to, in the outside world and in your reading and in your contemplation over the next week or so, I want you to just notice anytime you see fours, sets of fours of things, and I want you to contemplate how many things in our world are structured around 4. And please share your thoughts in the comments below and in the Facebook group. And until next time, take care of yourselves. I'll see you again very soon. Bye.